Hi, good morning. Have a nice day to everyone. I'm Riza May Bakay Pupuli, and today I'm going to discuss the characteristic of spoken discourse and the written discourse, and also its differences. So let's start. First, I would like to define what is written discourse and spoken discourse is. So, written discourse is similar to oral conversation in that it involves the written word as the name implies. Both the writer and the receiver must have the appropriate skills for information distribution. The writer must be able to write and the reader must be able to read in order to be successful. And on the other hand, spoken discourse is the continuous situational interpretation of a speaker's communicative goals, which include the addresses expected and actual reaction. They can imagine things like talking on the phone, having an interview, taking turns, having a group discussion, using advertisement, and even transferring information as an example. So, what are the characteristics of them? Discourse in writing, the structure, coherence, logical progression, and breadth of language resources in a written documents are all part of written discourse. The grammar and the vocabulary, as well as the range of grammatical structures and terminology employed in your work are considered linguistic resources. Let us now consider the qualities of written discourse in the same light, beginning with the same favorable aspect. Words can be more accurate if they are carefully considered and chosen. Words can be modified or rearranged after they have been written in order to improve one communication. To make the message more engaging, people tend to use bigger words and more complicated sentences. Writing might take a long time if the message and how it is delivered are given careful attention. The receiver can spread out the reading over a period of time in order to focus on the meaning. Writing is a method of preserving information in the form of permanent record. And on the other hand, written conversation have some disadvantages also. The reader or the receiver of information controls the transmission velocity. It is not always possible to predict who will read a piece of writing. It's possible that the meaning is backed up of some evidence, but there are no nonverbal communication cues to read. It is less personable and can be very one-sided. However, there are no nonverbal communication clues to pick up on. It is less personal and has a tendency to be one-sided. While spoken discourse listening processes characteristic in order to comprehend the nature of listening processes, we must analyze some of the characteristics of spoken discourse as well as the unique issues that it presents to listeners. Spoken and written discourse have extremely different qualities, and this distinction can help us understand how we humans process speech in a new ways. For instance, spoken communication is almost always immediate. The listener must digest it with little opportunity to replay it. Although speech rates vary significantly, spoken discourse typically affects the second language listener as being extremely quick. They are different to each other because written discourse is more structural complex and more elaborate than spoken discourse. On the other words, sentences in spoken discourse are short and simple, whereas they are longer and more complex in written discourse. Spoken discourse, like organization, is ungrammatical because it is spontaneous, whereas written discourse is organized and grammatical. Spoken discourse involves speaking and listening, while written involve reading and writing skills. Spoken discourse mostly use two people who are in the same place, while written promotes communication across space and time. And last, they are different because spoken discourse temporarily since there are no records, and written is permanent since there are records. So that's all for today. I hope you have learned something from this lecture. God bless and goodbye.